Hello, welcome to another edition of the Detour. Well, we're not actually live for the first time in a while because we've done a really great interview with Alex Stieda. He's the first North American to wear the yellow jersey, and we're also joined by Phil Anderson. It was a sensational interview.
Yeah, it was great to have them on board. And I still remember, I'd only been retired about 5 years then, and I remember young Alex getting that yellow jersey. It was a wonderful moment in a brilliant Tour de France, because it was a famous Tour de France that year where Hinault and Le Monde had the teammates had this real duel. It was never just given, so it was an amazing event.
Now, unpacking the Giro last night, Aussie Simon Clark at one point there when he was in the break, we thought, here we go, but unfortunately he finished third, which is still a great effort. What were your takeaways from the stage, mate?
Yeah, it was a tough day. It was the warm weather's definitely was left down south because it was a cold and tough road stage, plenty of climbing. Break got well clear, got given a fair bit of latitude, and so it was always going to be out of them. And then when the crunch came, there was only the three of them left. Jonathan Naive, I can't even say his name properly, but for young Ecuadorian, riding for the Ineos Grenadiers. He was very strong, along with Pardin, the Ukrainian, riding for Bahrain Merida. And Simon looked like he was going to match it with him for a while, but he cracked on one of the climbs and he ended up losing a few minutes, but hung on to it for a very strong third place. But the other two, I didn't know who was going to be the strongest, but then the Ukrainian unfortunately punctured. And even though he only lost about 30 seconds, by the time the wheel changed and he was trying to close, he just couldn't get there. He got to within 9 seconds, actually, and then he just started to falter, and the young Ecuadorian powered away to take the stage. And another good one for Ineos. They've lost the overall chance, but they keep shining for the individuals. And I think then tonight we've got another sprinter stage, and then tomorrow we're at the time trial. We'll probably see Ghana back in the winner's position, I reckon, in the time trial.
Now, the big talking point, if you go to Cycling News or any of the media outlets, is there's a bit of pressure on now for the Giro. We've spoken about it a lot on this show. How long can they continue the race for, given that the cycling bubble, it's compromised. And Jonathan Vaughters has come out and said that EF wrote to the UCI. They expressed their concerns, particularly around that cycling bubble. Do you think it's going to go past the next rest day?
It's interesting. I thought it was a very well-constructed letter he sent to the UCI and to the organisers and to each of the teams. Pretty well thought out, and he was just putting this as an option. What will pan out is if there's any more corona positives, then I don't think the race will go ahead. It will all depend over the next couple of days of the testing and the results. We got... I think what he's saying would be good if the sport itself said, you know what, this is the situation. Let's go to Sunday, which means we get the time trial, another big mountain stage. They can all know what's going to happen and have a definitive race through to Sunday. Okay, it's a week short, but it's not a bad idea. But if they don't get any more positives in the next 2 or 3 days up to that rest day, then the race will continue.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be interesting to see what happens, particularly over the next couple of days. Now, before we go to this interview, Johnny, I think we should get the sponsors' plugs in. Let's do them early this time. So, do your finest.
Well, it's so easy for me to do the wonderful Mitchelton Winery, Mitchelton Hotel, because I've got a little cabin up there at the lake, and I spend a bit of time in this place, and I absolutely love it. It is just glorious. As you can see, that photo probably doesn't even do true justice to the beauty of that area.
Do you want me to change the photo, John? Are you not happy with the photo?
No, I love the photo. And we could probably add a couple of extra ones in the future, showing some of the other great things, because the weddings up there, you can have your wedding out on this beautiful area that overlooks the Goulburn River, and then wander into the wonderful covered areas for the rest of it, and it's become the place to go for weddings.
Well, you're right. Why haven't I got more photos? I mean, that's just lazy. I should have. When you talk about the cellar and all that, we should be showing it.
You're right. Okay, I'm glad you're putting a bit of onus back on yourself. That's good.
I'll put my hand up. It's a team effort.
Accept
your faults.
Yeah. You've got a few. But I couldn't find my notes. Anyway,
I caught you. You've been reading notes the whole time.
Yeah, of course I have. But it comes
we'll
from my heart. I know my own inadequacies, but I've experienced the history, the beauty, and the serenity of the Goulburn Valley. And the beautiful Muse restaurant. Explore the seasonal menu with wines perfectly paired. We've mentioned about it's become the go-to place for weddings, and also that iconic tower there, which you can get up there in the lift and look out over the whole area. The day spa, where you can quiet the mind, unwind the body, rediscover your balance in a setting of peace and harmony. It sounds wonderful. It's just a beautiful place to go.
And it's so beautifully read too. Doing a great job, John. All right, here's a quick word from our mates at Bike Exchange.
Look at this bike. You think it's just a bike, right? But it's not. It's a bike 374 people are looking at. This guy, this girl, them, all looking at it. People from here, there, and wherever this is. People that are looking for a bike. Or just a piece of it. Amateurs, semi-amateurs, and pro-amateurs. This guy wants this bike, but with this crank and these bars. This could be the perfect match. But not this one. This girl has a bike to sell, and thousands of people might purchase it. Eyes on Bikes help grow small businesses. His, hers, yours, and the latest data and insights help those businesses keep moving. We are the world's #1 bike marketplace, with over 500,000 products and 900 brands, where buyers and sellers are brought together in a place where a bike is never just a bike. Bike Exchange, where the world buys, sells, learns, and rides.
Never gets old, that ad, Evie.
No, it's wonderful.
Now it's time for our feature interview of the show with Canadian Alex Stieda, and we're also joined by the great Skippy Phil Anderson. Well, Iffy, we're joined by more cycling royalty, particularly from Canada, or as Phil Liggett likes to say, North America. Alex Stieda, welcome to the Detour, mate. How are you?
Pretty good. Yeah. I only know you guys by watching the Detour. I haven't met you guys personally, unfortunately.
Well, you are the most tech savvy guest we've ever had on this show. You've got a proper mic, you've got the proper Wi-Fi, you've got a great camera set up. You know how to do framing. I'm really looking forward to this chat, particularly from a tech perspective, mate.
Yeah, and that includes that includes Dan and I. You're the most tech savvy, including us, because yeah.
Well, we'll see about that. I work in the bike I've worked in the bike industry, but I also work now in the IT industry in IT business development. So it's kind of got to be familiar with all the goings on inside that world.
So, Alex, you're obviously known as the first North American to ever wear the yellow jersey at the Tour de France. Now, we had a look at some videos online. There's a sensational clip that people have to go out and have a look at that Rafa did. And you're a very, very good storyteller, mate. Has that always been the case, or has that come with age?
Yeah, I think it comes with age and experience. You know, I certainly don't mind a good yarn and a couple stubbies and to tell a few stories, that's for sure. But I think, as you get older and you kind of get you gather all these different experiences. And I certainly do love to share, the past, and especially the cycling past that I've had over the last 45 years.
I just got to reiterate what Dan said. People have to look at that Rafa clip because it's beautifully done and it's a lovely story. And you talk about where you live and all of that. But I watched it and I remember you getting that yellow jersey. I'd only been retired 4 or 5 years. I'm good mates with Phil. Of course, I was following his career closely. And I watched it the other day when I knew you were going to come on, and it was just brought all that back to me, and I had the hair standing up in the back of my neck, and the fact of how little you knew about the tour and the enormity of it, and that just shone out. I just loved that whole story.
Yeah, exactly. We were babes in the woods. Truly were. We thought we had it all figured out. Of course, we were all in our mid-20s. I was 25, first year pro, and it was just a bit. We thought, oh yeah, this is it. We're at the Tour de France. We're great. We're awesome. But in reality, we knew nothing, absolutely nothing. No one on the team had ever ridden the Tour de France. I think Mike Neal, our director, had raced in the Tour of Italy when he was a pro in the 70s, hadn't raced in France at all. And Jacques Boyer hadn't joined our team yet. So we were just sort of feeling our way and trying to figure it out as we went.
Well, funnily, the other connection, Mike Neal, I knew Mike very well. We rode the Olympics together, 72, and we rode a Tour of Mexico in 1973. And Clyde Sefton, who silver in Munich Olympics, Clyde, Mike Neal, Donnie Allen, and myself were all out of the Tour of Mexico for heat exhaustion or whatever, high altitude, who knows. But we went by train, bus, hitchhiked, whatever, from the other end of Mexico, got to Mexico City and watched Eddie Merckx break the hour record.
Oh, you guys were there?
We were there. Mike was there. Was Mike, Donnie Allen, Clyde Sefton, and myself.
Oh,
we watched Eddie break the hour record. Yep.
Now, what you'll find on this show, Alex, is it'll slowly shift back to John, and it's more about his stories and his experiences. So you just got to roll with it.
So I have to clear something up. So after the 82 Commonwealth Games in 1982, and we're in Brisbane, and we were supposed to race a stage race after the Commonwealth Games, somewhere Queensland, New South Wales.
Yeah,
and
Commonwealth Classic. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And the Canadian track pursuit team that I was on, we decided to bail. And we went up to Noosa instead. We didn't tell anyone. And I want to know if that was you. Were you running that race, or do you know who was running that race?
No, I probably wouldn't be talking to you now if I was. No, I do. A good mate of mine, Phil Bates, ran the Commonwealth Classic for a lot of years. Yeah.
Right.
He was the first person to bring Phil Liggett out to Australia. We dragged him out to do commentary on his events, and I did the same for my events later on. Yeah.
Now, Alex, my knowledge of cycling pre sort of Miguel Indurain days is really rusty, but going on what John always tells me, it's harder, tougher conditions. We were just tough as nails. Was it a lot different to what you see obviously in the peloton now, particularly as a young Canadian? You head over to Europe, I think in like 81 or whatever. How did you find that transition?
Well, I think for a number of reasons, we had it tough. I mean, number one, the culture. We didn't have a condo in Girona waiting for us. Okay, so a team car picked us up at the airport. Fair enough, and they brought us to a hotel that was usually where we were staying with 7-Eleven. It was bare bones. Sometimes there were mirrors on the ceiling. Yeah, I'm serious. Yeah. Okay. Sometimes we stayed in like an old folks home where we lined up for dinner, at the trough with, people who could barely walk. They were in their 80s, and we were there because it was cheap.
Yeah.
Because Noel de Jonker had it sorted out for us. So the culture was no one spoke English, in wherever we went, in the shops, anywhere you went. But in the peloton, it was even harder. No one spoke English. So I learned to speak a single sentence in 5 different languages. Fortunately, I grew up speaking French in school and here in Canada. So French was my main second language, but then my family history is German, so I knew some German, and then I picked up some Italian, and then a bit of Spanish, and every sentence has like 4 or 5 different languages in it. And I remember speaking with Acacio da Silva, and he was so funny, such a great guy, but he had zero English, zero. But I got along with him. I chatted with him in the race because I could speak these different languages in kind of, semi-confused state.
Now, before we bring on a special guest, I want to show a snippet of that Rafa clip, which is when you're talking about the day you took the yellow jersey.
There's a break coming. You got to stay away so the break doesn't catch you before then. And so Phil Anderson was in the break, came up. I'd never spoken to Phil Anderson before because he's an Australian guy on this Panasonic team. They were the gods. And he comes up, touches me and says, "Hey, you're in the jersey, mate. Come on." Like, he understood the game and knew.
Now, so I'll have to say that was a terrible Aussie accent, mate. You're in the jersey, mate. You need to work on that. But we've got Phil.
Practicing my Aussie. Oh, there he is.
We've got Phil.
Hey, Alex, how's it going, mate? You haven't changed a bit. You look exactly the same. Except we all wear glasses now.
Bloody else, mate.
So, Phil, what do you remember about that day that Alex took the yellow jersey back in '86?
Yeah, it was early on. I think it was stage 1. I don't know if we had a prologue that year, but it was early on. And you went early, and I think I was in the counter attack, and we caught you in the closing kilometres. But yeah, you grabbed some valuable bonification seconds up the road, winning some sprints because you were up there alone. And I congratulated you went past, but it's stage in the tour, and everybody else is what does Lance say? Balls deep.
Was there a bit of a pact among the riders, like English speakers? Come on, we've got to work together. We've got to look after these guys.
Oh, I think like Alex just alluded to, there are very few English-speaking riders in the peloton. I was there a few years before, and there's a few riders like Sean Kelly, but you couldn't really say he spoke English. If you try and listen to him on Eurosport, it's a real struggle. But yeah, it was somebody to talk with in the bunch, and we all had our duties to do for our teams and strategies. But I mean, all things being equal, if we didn't have to chase, we wouldn't have chased down each other. But we're all there for a job, and you all be very professional about it. And at the same end, we try and look after each other.
What I really enjoyed watching that Rafa piece, as I mentioned to you, Alex, was your honesty and how little you knew about pro cycling and what you're really in for, which is just the same as Phil, only 4 or 5 years earlier in '81 when he jumped into his first tour and got a yellow jersey and also didn't know what it meant, how big it was, and really what he was in for. There's such a similar story, actually.
Yeah, we were really, we did, of course, there was no internet, and we were just reading, cycling magazines that we could get a hold of here in Canada that were few and far between. There was a British coach named Barry Lysett, who was instrumental in my development as a junior on the track in Vancouver, where I grew up. We had the wooden track that was built for the *54 Empire Games. I don't know, John, if you were at that.
Not quite, mate. I'm not that much bloody.
Okay, all right. Anyway, I don't know.
He hasn't aged well. He has not aged well. That British coach was, Barry was, or Baz was just, amazing for us. He had a really interesting connection with Belgium in that he would go to Europe every winter and work the 6th day as a soigneur, and his main guy that he worked for was Willy de Boscher.
Willie the Joker.
The Joker, the clown. Yeah. And so there was a Belgian connection. And then Ron Heyman was my mentor, and he was a pro. He had raced pro, gone over to Belgium to race pro in 78, 79-ish, and would come home for the winter in Vancouver and train with us in the winter. And then Ron recommended that I go to Belgium to find out what bike racing was all about. And that was really my first introduction to learning about real bike racing. We've been racing in the Pacific Northwest in Vancouver and Seattle. But so I went to Ghent in 1981, and I was 20 years old on my own. I mean, I'm sure Phil can talk about this too with ACBB and all, but I was literally there on my own. And Ron hooked me up with a friend named Luke IJzermans, who is in sort of the Belgian cycling mafia in Ghent, and got me a place to stay with Staff Bona.
Oh, geez, you were in that bloody terrible place.
Yeah, well, yeah, it was actually wasn't in Ghent itself. It was outside of Ghent.
Butcher shop.
And well, but that was Warzy van Turtelboom had the meat shop.
Yeah.
Across from Staff's store. But I was out in Drongen by the Watersportbaan.
Ah, yeah.
Okay, but here's my first Aussie connection is that in that place I first met my first Australian friend. His name was Ricky Flood.
Ah,
Floody.
Yeah.
Floody.
Hey?
Good man.
Yeah.
Good man. Ricky Flood. Yep.
And his buddy that he's been racing 6 days with there in Ghent was Phil Brotherton.
Peter Brotherton.
Well, no, that's Phil. I think, wasn't it Phil was his son?
Peter Brotherton.
Well, Peter was the son. Okay, I got that mixed up. Anyway, it was a brother. Anyway, so here I am, shacked up with Ricky Flood in this stupid little, it was literally a cold water flat, and I'd never heard of that before. But there was just cold water that you turn on the tap. That was it. No hot water, and in the back was an outhouse, literally an outhouse in the backyard.
Yeah.
So given how big cycling is in Belgium, when you took the jersey, I mean, when Matt Hayman won Paris-Roubaix, his entire street shut down. I think they're still partying, and that was 4 years ago. But what did they do when you took the jersey? They would have just been ecstatic.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I got to know a few people in Belgium just because I lived there for a few months. I didn't live there for a long time, just a few months, and then I came back to Canada. It was a short trip just to race Kermesse and just get a feel for it. But I know that there, like the folks that I got to know later, like the de Jonker brothers, and Luke IJzermans, Staff Bona, Warzy, they were just ecstatic. That they remembered having me there and sort of looking after me, and that was pretty cool.
Hey, Phil, what was the perception of the 7-Eleven team back then? You were obviously riding in 86 for the big boys, the Panasonics. What was the Peloton's view of the new upstarters?
Look, it was possibly unjust, but I think it's been documented. But we were all told to beware of these newcomers, these blow-ins, and give them plenty of room. And they're dangerous or whatever. But I'd raced a little bit in America, the late 70s, and the late 70s, and they're just regular riders. They obviously just didn't have the experience which we'd had racing in Europe. And for any new team or even any new pro that comes over and starts riding the peloton, there's always that sort of intrepidation by the rest of the peloton to watch out. Let's watch out for these guys. Make sure they don't tip us off, or we're not sure if they're used to riding in such a big bunch, or what to expect. And rightfully so. I mean, Alex said, you didn't follow the traditions. They didn't know what the traditions were other than reading in the magazine. And we all know it's pretty limited what you can get out of a magazine, or even these days on the internet. Being in a bunch is completely different than being in a Strava group or what you see on the television coverage.
And did that change after you took the jersey? Did you feel that you got a little bit more respect?
Yeah, for me it did. I had guys like Henny Kuiper come up to me and congratulate me, and just tell me that I to prove I'd won the jersey, I had to finish the Tour de France. And so there were, and then I do remember we were coming around a turn and then one of the guys in the gruppetto yelling, "Watch out, Alex, 23. I was like, what? Okay, I'll put it in the 23. That was the lowest gear we had. And all of a sudden we come around and there's a steep ramp, wow, someone's looking after me. That was kind of cool, those sort of things started to happen. Yeah.
Well, this is a question for both of you. Have you found that as time's passed, you appreciate wearing the yellow jersey even more?
No, absolutely. Absolutely. It means so much, now than it did then. And yeah, I've told my kids the story, my kids are 26 and 28, but yeah, for sure. It means so much. I really do treasure it now. And, I just interviewed Swain Tuft, and, Swaino, of course, Jonesy. And, I asked him to pull out his pink jersey from the Giro. Well, he pulls it out of this bag and he holds it up and it's all wrinkled and the numbers kind of crunched up. And Swaino, you got to put that in a frame. And he's like, I don't know. I was like, don't worry. There will come a time when you will want to put that in a frame and post it up on your wall.
Yeah.
Amazing guy, Swaino.
I think for me, it's the same. I mean, at the time, you don't realize the significance of it because, you wouldn't think you'd be, 30, 40 years down the track still talking about it. But at the time, you just, focusing on the next stage, trying to defend it, whether you'll get it back again or, your teammates, what the plans are. You're not really dwelling on the, what you've achieved. And it possibly isn't until after, like Alex said, after I retired, then you sort of look back and take stock of what you've done during those years. And I think it would be the same now. I mean, there's riders who get the jersey every year. They're either good time trial, good prologue riders, good time trialists. I got it the next year as well, quite a few days, but that was it. It took me 10 years before I won another stage. So something you never should take for granted. That's for sure.
Yeah. Now, one thing I noticed, just changing topic a bit, Alex, is you were co-founder of the Tour of Alberta, and we, Orica Greenwich, rode Tour of Alberta, I think in 2013. It was a sensational race. Because, like English speaking. And I remember one of the stages, I think there was 4 corners for 160K. It was just dead straight. But I want to ask you, how tough is it, particularly in this current environment, to be an event organizer? And it seems like the cycling structure as a whole might need a bit of a change moving forward.
Yeah, I've watched some of your previous shows. Yeah, the industry and the business model of professional cycling is really broken. We had to stop putting the race on here in Alberta. We just couldn't raise the funds to keep the race going. The provincial government, our state government, was interested, but they didn't want to foot the whole bill, and they kept wanting us to bring on more corporate sponsorship. And then the oil price crash hit. And our industry is really affected by oil here because we take a lot of that out of the ground, and that just killed us. And it was just too hard to keep it going. There wasn't enough various sponsors that we could bring on, or even, of course, one big sponsor that wasn't even possible to keep it going here. And I was using the Tour Down Under as our business model because I really liked what they were doing down there, what Michael Turner was doing.
And also, they lost the 2 one-day races with the COVID, Quebec and Alberta, Montreal. How is the cycling scene in Canada at the moment?
Well, I think it's sort of hot spots here and there, and it's really about sort of individuals with passion that are keeping it going, and wherever they happen to be. Here in Edmonton, we have 5 months of winter where there's snow on the ground. We have an outdoor track that was built for the 78 Commonwealth Games, where Phil actually won the road race. Hopefully, I'm not dating you there, Phil. But
no, it wasn't the Empire game, but
you were just a baby, in '78. But so we have a really strong culture with the Juventus Cycling Club here in Edmonton. But it's a group of people here in Edmonton that really care about the sport. Yeah, and there's a few folks in Calgary that do that. Vancouver has quite a few strong cycling clubs. They've got the Grand Fondo Whistler, which has been going for over 10 years now, and they get over 5,000 people for each Fondo every year. And then, if you go east, well, Quebec is really strong with cycling. They have a very strong cycling culture, lots of good clubs. and then the Toronto area as well. But other than that, it's hit and miss. It's really tough, and it's easier now to find cycling people because of the internet and social media. But back in the day, back in the 80s, man, you pretty much knew everyone that raced bikes across the country.
I remember in the mid-90s, I took Jerry's first pro team, the Jayco cycling team, away to race in the States. We raced the US Pro and to West Virginia, which was quite a big race then. Lance rode that. And then we went up to Quebec and rode those two tours up in Quebec, Luc St. John and another one. They were fantastic races.
Yeah, I mean, the Tour de Beauce has been going for 25 years. They've been just that's a Cat 2 level race, and it's just fantastic for developing riders. And the two World Cups, are put on by a guy that has a media company in Quebec, and he produces the event himself, so that it's in his benefit to put on the event because it creates content for his media network. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy there. So that's a great business model for him.
Now, one thing we were talking about a fair bit the last couple of days is Mark Cavendish. And, a lot of people have said, hey, it's time to hang up the boots, Mark. How did you guys go towards the latter end of your career when you're sort of thinking, I think it could be time? How did you know, Alex?
Yeah, that was tricky. Definitely hard to make that call. I was 31, so relatively young. But there's another Aussie named Danny Clark. Actually, had told me one day, Alex, you got to keep racing as long as you can. Sorry. Yeah, no, I don't think I want to do that, Danny.
Yeah, he's still racing though. He's never stopped.
But so I've always gone through life with my blinders off, unlike Pascal Ackerman. And the opportunity came to retire from racing and join this the soft ride bicycle company that I'd been racing on for a couple of years. And it really intrigued me what they were doing with soft ride and sort of breaking the mold around how bicycles were made. And it just seemed like the right time to do it. I had one baby and another one on the way, and it just made sense. I don't know. It was heartbreaking to stop. That's for sure, but it made sense.
What about you, Phil? When did you know?
Yeah, for me, I mean, riders, like the top riders, normally they announce like 3 or 4 years before they're going to retire. They say, okay, I think Hino retired at 32 or 33. But for me, I think I just basically took it year by year. I was really enjoying what I was doing, and I was still getting results. But then as I got into, my mid-30s, I was always the last person at the breakfast table. I was struggling. There's new faces coming in, riders coming into the peloton, which I had never heard of. I mean, it was, I think, a bit different now. You've got the under 23s, and there's a filtering, and then coming into the doing the same races as the elites. But back then, there was you'd never see the riders before they arrived in the pro peloton, and there were very few riders of my generation left by the time I retired. It wasn't that I didn't have younger friends in the peloton, but those guys that came through the brat pack of the 79, 80, 81 years, they were becoming few and few. And I think when I retired, I think I was the second oldest rider in the peloton, and I was 36. So
wow.
Yeah, you look at the age now; they're getting up towards 40. I remember when Joop Zoetemelk, he won the world championships. He was 35, 36, I think, and that was extraordinary.
Chris Horner won the Vuelta at 60.
Ish. Yeah.
Rode the Empire game when he was 3. So,
that's right.
Alex, a number.
Valverde, I mean, he's 40 and he's still at the top end, so you can do it. But then at the other end of the scale, we've got all these youngsters, 21 winning the Tour de France in his first attempt. You know, that just didn't happen back in the old days. So it's a very different world now.
Yeah, I think there's so much more awareness around training and nutrition and preparation, how the guys are brought up as they're younger so that they're ready. I still think 2021 is too early to race the Tour de France, but maybe I'm still too old school. I don't know, but it's just everything is advanced. It has been brought forward, so that accelerates everything, not just athletes' careers, but everything we do in life. And it'll be interesting to see how far that can be pushed, because I really do think it's going to be detrimental to our young riders' career. I mean, we see that with Egan Bernal this year. Last year he was like, however old he is, was he 21 last year?
22,
just amazing. And this year, didn't quite have the spark that he did last year, that can come from going way too hard too early in your athletic career.
Do you think that also?
Sorry, mate.
And where's he going to be at age 35?
Yeah,
is he going to?
That's what I was going to say.
Still having sport? Is he still going to have the dig at the Tour de France? I think of Valverde. The days of characters like Valverde. Are over, because if you can't do it young, you just don't see those riders in their, reaching their peak in their 30s, other than maybe Richie Porte.
Well, then there's the case that Pogacar, by the time he's 26, he probably will have won 5 Tours de France, so he probably doesn't need to go on much longer.
Well, they better get it done now, because otherwise they're going to be burned out.
But Alex, I wanted to let's go back to that 86 Tour. So there, your teammate won a stage only a couple of days later as well. That was a fantastic effort.
Yeah, Davis Finney. In fact,
Davis Finney.
So we had I won the jersey in the morning stage by getting on the break, getting the time bonuses. Phil's break caught me, and then all my job was just keep the break moving so we didn't get caught. So Van der Rodden didn't win the time bonus at the end, and we ended up staying away, which was great. Paul Verschura won the stage. I mean, geez. And then that afternoon we had a team time trial, I should say, 60 odd kilometers, and we just completely screwed the pooch, as we might say in Canada. I don't know if you say that in Australia.
Yeah, we say that.
That was just like the best and the worst day of my life right there. And then the next day, Davis gets in the break of like 20 odd guys, Davis Finney, my teammate.
Yeah.
And he's, going through the line, and he's thinking they're sprinting for second place, because I think he thought a Colombian guy had got away. But it turned out that Colombian guy had punctured, and they'd passed him, and he didn't realize that. Of course, there's no radios. So Davis was sprinting, thinking he's sprinting for second. And he actually does the bike throw at the line, wins the sprint, thinking, second. But in fact, he won the stage. I mean, just like another crazy situation.
But the other question I was going to ask is, because that was the amazing tour. I'll get you both to comment on this, but of the duel between the teammates, Hinault and Greg LeMond. Now, you guys, what are your memories of that? Because I can remember Greg LeMond being so stressed because whereas Hinault had said he was going to ride for him, but he never did. And he never really gave it up until really the last day.
There's a great ESPN 30 for 30 doco on that called Slaying the Badger. It's brilliant.
I've seen it.
Yeah.
I never saw that part of the race.
Yeah, right.
I was not there.
Yeah,
when those guys were going head to head and just hitting each other, I never saw that. I was just hanging on for dear life at the back. So maybe Phil saw some of that.
Yeah, I mean, I was a friend of Greg, but he never really opened up to me. I think he was. I mean, I guess I was, a quasi contender as well, so he didn't speak to me too much about what was going on within his ranks. But yeah, I mean, obviously, I've read a lot about it since, and yeah, Bernard certainly gave Greg a really hard time that year, and yeah, not the best of teammates, but yeah, I guess his director, I think it was Cyril Guimard, wanted to keep them sharp, keep on their edge, and yeah, it's always good to have a B plan, but when it's A and B battling for the same spot right up into the until the finish, I think it was a time trial or something, the penultimate stage. But yeah, it was exciting to watch, and the French, everybody loved it, but yeah, Greg, he wouldn't have slept much those 3 weeks.
Alex, I want to ask you about current cycling. There's some news that broke today with EF and Jonathan Borders saying that they should stop the Giro on the next rest day. Are you surprised that the Giro's even continuing at this point with all the COVID situation?
Yeah, I am actually. As a race organizer myself, I can't imagine what RCS is going through, and just looking at what Waddy was saying about the situation, about how the race hotels are organized, and there's there's more than one team and hotel, fine, but there's the public is staying there as well in some of these hotels, and then the next hotel they're staying with different teams. It's just not structured like ASO has structured it. So yeah, in typical Italian fashion, they're kind of a little bit laissez-faire. Maybe don't worry, it'll work. It's good. But if you're, just watching the news every day, the COVID cases are going up in France, in Italy, and they're, having to, put in stronger lockdowns. If they don't get a handle on the bubble situation and get stricter with that, I don't think the race is going to keep going. I think if they can control the race hotel situation and from the finish of the race to the bus and create these corridors for the riders not to interact with fans, but if they don't change that, it's not going to last. Yeah.
What do you reckon, Phil?
Oh, look, I'm surprised there's any events this year, to tell you the truth. I mean, geez, how the Tour de France dodged that bullet. And since then, the numbers have just skyrocketed in France and Italy. I think it's day by day. I can't see them going another week, which is disappointing because it's a huge event, and the efforts that everybody's putting in, the organizer, the teams, sitting the fans down. But yeah, I mean, it's just one of those years, I think, where everybody just wants to forget. So. Yeah, I can't see it. I can't see it going another week. But I mean, I was saying that at the Tour de France. I was saying, there's no way this is going to finish. There's no way. But yeah, they got through, and there's only very few positive cases, and but now we see teams starting to drop, and the occasional. It's day by day.
I think the next 2 or 3 days really are going to be telling, because they've done all this new testing. And if they can get through till the rest day and no more positives, then it very well could go most of the way. But I don't think that's going to happen, because I think with there's just all those police. I know it was the police with the e-bike race, but so many of them have caught it. I will be staggered if there are quite a few positives come out over the next couple of days.
Yeah, it's definitely a tricky situation. But I do have a Greg LeMond story I should tell you.
Please share.
It's a story that I'm able to share. Some of the stories from Greg LeMond you're not allowed to share because he was kind of a crazy party animal. But in 1979, I went to Junior Worlds in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and I was a pursuiter. That was really my target event, individual pursuit, 3K as a junior. And I thought I was pretty hot. And I had an aero bike, a Marinoni with an oval down tube. That was aero back then. And I worked my way up through the qualification round, and then I was up in the quarterfinals against Greg LeMond, this American guy. And all right, let's give it a shot. So, gun goes. I'm on my pace every lap. And Jocelyn Lovell was our mechanic, but he was also our kind of mentor.
Superstar.
Unbelievable. Anyway, Jocelyn was probably the world's best cyclist ever, if he'd ever have been given the chance. But anyway, and in those days in the pursuit, I don't know if they still have it, but there's a red light and a green light for one side or the other. As soon as your wheel hit the tape, your light color went on. Every lap, the lights were going on at the same time. Tick, 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 tick. And I was just like, I tried to look across the track, but I couldn't see through all the fans. Anyway, and it was like every lap we were like neck and neck, and we were just digging harder and harder and harder. And at the end, he beat me. I mean, the lights went on at the same time. I didn't know who had won, literally. And he ended up beating me. And that was the first time that I couldn't, when I got off my bike, and Jocelyn had to catch me and undo my toe straps for me. And I got off my bike, I couldn't stand. And he had pushed me so hard. I went so deep in those 3 kilometers. And then in 1982 at the Coors Classic, where there was a criterium on the wharf in San Francisco, I got away with him in the criterium and beat him in the sprint and got my vengeance back.
I love it.
I am seeing a lot of similarities, Alex, between you and Iffy, because Iffy's told me so many stories of some great bike riders that he's just been nutted by, and there's always a story in there, John.
Yep. Oh, well, De Vlaeminck, I told De Vlaeminck beat me on stage in the Tour of Swiss. This was in 81. And I said to the sports director, I said, you didn't have the 12 on. I could have won him, but I had the 12 on. And he said, you don't beat De Vlaeminck. Anyway, a couple of weeks later, I beat De Vlaeminck and Sean Kelly in the bunch kick for fourth place in Dortmund. But anyway, I got my revenge like you. You know, that's exactly right. Yeah,
it comes around. Absolutely.
Hey, Alex, if you've seen a few of these episodes, you know that we ask a lot of former pros, what do you think was the key to the success in your career? What are the takeaways from your story, mate?
Well, for me, I think it was Jim Okowitz believing in me, and I, staying on the 7-Eleven team for 8 years was a blessing. Like, Oach believed in me, and a lot of other guys on the team. And, it was such an amazing group of guys. We still have reunions every 5 years. I mean, it was a special group, and I still feel, to have been, so fortunate to have been part of that group, and to have the Oach and the group have that confidence in me.
Well, after your reunion, do you all go out for Slurpees? Sorry, mate.
No. Yeah. In fact, even with 7-Eleven jerseys on, we'd go into a 7-Eleven and no one would know who we were. The employees had no idea that they sponsored a cycling team, and there was no free.
Did you get any 7-Eleven perks? Nothing.
No.
That's disappointing.
We did get a free set of golf clubs.
Oh, that's all right. Set of sticks.
7-Eleven on the bag, and yeah.
And what about you, Phil? What do you reckon the takeaways for you were? Like, people in COVID, they need a bit of motivation. Come on, Phil, let's get them up out of the seat. Let's fire them up.
Well, I mean, I still love racing my bike, and I think that's what got me not racing, but riding the bike. And I think that's what got me up each morning was just the passion for 2 wheels and getting out there. I mean, I felt very fortunate. I was being paid for what I was loving to do. And never to give up. Keep those goals in the back of your mind. And you're always going to have some tough times. I had some particularly tough moments through my career. Sometimes it was personal, sometimes it's health. There's different reasons for those things. But you just just drive forward and set a goal and don't lose focus.
Yeah, good stuff, mate. Now, if you got anything before we let the guys go?
Yeah, just I'm shame I didn't get to meet you in '81, Alex. It was my last year, and I was living in Canocker down by the beach because of my wife and kids with me that year. But normally I lived in Ghent, and Rosa de Snurk, from the famous de Snurk family who had Plume Vancouver. I used to always live at her house. I remember one time staying there after I'd stopped racing. I was there for a bike show or something, and Eric Hayden, your teammate, was staying with Rosa. And I had an afternoon and evening with Eric listening to his stories, and what a fascinating guy he was.
Amazing. Yeah, he was great to have as a teammate, and then later as the doctor of the team. But the guy was just an absolute specimen. Like, you rode behind him and it was like riding behind a truck. It was just like his quads are like this big, and his torso, and I could not believe he was able to get up the mountains in that Tour de France. He ended up crashing in the Tour de France that year, hitting his head on a descent. It was in the Pyrenees, I think. And Max Testa, our doctor, leaned out of the car when they finally caught up to him and started asking him questions. He had no idea where he was, when he was born. All those things. So they just stopped him right there, took his number off, put him in the car. Yeah, so that was a tough deal for Eric.
An amazing guy. He was the world's best ever skater. with so many gold medals.
5 gold medals, Lake Placid, 80 Olympics. Yeah.
Amazing.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
Well,
but like you, Phil, I still love riding my bike, and I think I always look back on that. And there's guys that got into the sport for the wrong reasons. I think because they thought they were going to make a lot of money. And when they retired, they stopped riding. And I just could not imagine my life without riding my bike. You have to ask my wife about that. But it is truly part of me. And I spend time, volunteering with the local cycling club, helping, coach our young kids. And I just get so much out of seeing that spark in those young riders, getting excited about cycling, and I get to do it with them, which is so much fun.
Yeah. So you should be, mate. You should be proud, and maybe you'll see him, in the big league in a few years. How would it be?
Yeah, that's not the ultimate goal, because you and I know it's so hard to get to that level and to stay at that level. But there's been a few kids that have knocked on the door at national events and national teams. So it's good, and we're actually having more success with women for our area making it to the national track team and going to Olympics and worlds on the track. And that's been fulfilling as well, of course, because that track is where I started.
Hey, awesome. Well, it's been an unbelievable chat, guys. I've really enjoyed it, and thanks again for coming on the show, and thanks for really dialing up the tech side of things, Alex. It's always a big relief when someone's got good Wi-Fi, good lighting, good audio. Phil, your Wi-Fi is not too bad, but you make up for it with good content, mate.
Great stuff. Thanks a lot, fellas. Really appreciate it.
All right. Great to be on.
Dan. Good to see you, Alex. Dan, we'll see you, mate.
So that was Alex Stieda and Phil Anderson. Now, I kept the tape rolling, and we couldn't stop talking. So this is the last little bit of that interview.
Right.
Thanks, fellas. That was awesome.
Work on that accent. Work on that accent there, Alex.
I'll give you one last takeaway.
Yeah.
There was movement at the station. The word had got around. The colt from Old Regat had got away, and it was worth £1,000.
Not bad.
Not bad. Not bad at all.
I'd written him a letter, which I had for want of better knowledge, sent to where I met him down the Lachlan years ago. He was shearing when I knew him, so I sent a letter to him, just on spec, addressed as follows: Clancy of the Overflow. There you go.
He's very happy with that, John. Well done, mate.
And a shout out to my mum in Lithgow.
Okay.
That's right. Yeah, your mum's up in Lithgow, isn't she?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. How'd that come about?
Well, my dad passed away from a heart attack in '83, right before I went to the Olympics, which was really unfortunate. So my mom found some solace in cycling because she had grown up cycling in the UK. So in Vancouver, where we were living, and then she went to the Masters World Games in St. Johann, Austria, every year with a Masters group from Vancouver, and met an Australian, Clive Lang, and then she ended up moving to Lithgow, got married in a sheep shed years later.
Oh, fantastic! Oh,
And
a real Aussie connection there.
And actually was very instrumental in Mark Renshaw's young cycling career.
Oh, wow.
That's
awesome.
Great yarn. Okay.
So yeah,
we'll definitely let that in the
Australian
show.
connection somewhere, I don't know.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's great. Love it. All
right. Thanks again, boys.
Yeah, okay, boys.
Speak to you again soon.
Okay, mate.
Good on you.
Too easy.
Okay,
cheers,
bye
mate.
now.
There you have it. There's the interview with Alex. Geez, he speaks well, Iffy. I thought he had some great little insights there.
Yeah, no, obviously a great young man and a fantastic career. And we said earlier, make sure you Google up that Rafa when they visited him. It's a wonderful little doco. So, and it's great always to have Phil on. What a superstar.
Before we go, I paid out on Sunweb. Remember I said that video they did was a bit too dark when Bling ran second? Yeah. Now they've bounced back, Johnny. They have bounced back with a vengeance. I don't know if the media guys are watching the detour, but they've released another video yesterday I saw on Twitter, and it's a little bit more jovial. They're having a bit more fun in the team. Let's have a look.
It's hard not to stop moving, huh, with this song. My time loves it. He always asks me about Blasmusik.
I cannot say I hate it because then Nico will kill me, I think.
Oh no, you have your opinion.
It's his religion almost, this music. The Blasmusik.
Yeah, you liked it, huh?
You can make another video about that.
Yeah, about time.
This is also what he listens to all the time.
Fucking my time.
Yeah, this is nice. This is nice.
Hey, you loved it, huh? I put it on, like my playlist was running, and then this song popped up.
Yeah, when you have your Schlager music on, that's what I have on my headphones.
Yeah, of course. And when I come out of the bathroom, this song was playing, my time was like, yeah. Going full gas,
Oh, it's nice, eh?
There you go. Bit of Schlager. That's the equivalent to Johnny Farnham, I think, in Holland. But they love it, the Dutchies. Like, they love that real, like the cross music where you skull a beard and stuff. But good
it's
on
like
Sunweb.
What's the international film music festival, the song festival? What is it? The Eurovision.
Eurovision.
It's all Eurovision type stuff. Yeah.
But no, I like it. Like whenever they give people insights with cyclists, a bit of their personality, having a bit of a laugh, showing their different tastes in music. I mean, it's all good stuff. All right, Johnny, predictions. Who's going to win stage number 13 of the Giro?
Well, I hate to just sound like a broken record, but it looks like a sprint stage to me. And if that's the case, Demar, good number 5, mate.
The punters are not agreeing with you, John. Demar is 5th in the market. Peter Sagan's the favourite, $3.25. Ballerini, $9. Ulysses, $10. Ben Swift, $11. But that is actually pretty surprising, isn't it? Like Demar, he's the quickest guy in the race. He can climb. He's won Milan San Remo, $14. That is actually pretty juicy. I've actually got to pay that. Yeah. But obviously, there's 2 Cat 4s towards the end of the stage. It's a 192k stage, and the last one comes at 176k to go. So it's going to be on for young and old over those last 2 climbs. And if a break gets away, then that blows your bets. But so you're going to go with Demar?
Yep. All
right. Well, we'll have to stay tuned. Anything you want to add before we go, mate?
No. Loved the show, and the footy tonight will be. We'll have to go the Tigers, I guess. Being Victorian, but they could have their work cut out for them, I think.
Yep. All right, well, stay tuned again to the detour tomorrow night. And no doubt John will line up a pretty special guest. Stay tuned for that.